Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be talking about the best weapons in Call of Duty Black Ops 4, and I'm going to be giving you a best class setup for each of them. Obviously there's going to be different rankings depending on what mode you're talking about, and specifically whether or not you're playing hardcore, core, or if you're playing league play where there's competitive rule set. So class setups we'll be specifically talking about are the best class setups for public matches in core game modes. So if you enjoy the video or find any of the tips in it useful, please remember to hit that like button, and if you're one of the 78% that haven't yet subscribed but keep coming back for more, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with notifications on, and you can double check that. If your icon is red, that means you are not subscribed. Go ahead and hit it, turn it to gray. Personally, to keep the ranking as easy as possible, I actually break down all the weapons into 3 categories. So you can see that first category is going to be tier 1 weapons, which I categorize as will more than likely be nerfed at some point or a little bit overpowered. That second category is labeled as tier 2 weapons, which I would consider fairly balanced. So that's going to be the KN, the SWAT, the Daemon, ... all the way through. And there's a ton of weapons in that category. And then the last category is that tier 3 category, which are weapons that I define as needing a buff in some way because they're a little bit underwhelming or underpowered. So when it comes to ranking all the different weapons in the game, we're going to have about 5 weapons in that tier 2 category, which are on the higher end of the tier 2, meaning that they're very strong weapons, but in no way are overpowered in my opinion. Then once we've gone through all of those 5 weapons, we're going to go ahead and transition into the top 5, which are all part of the tier 1 category. So something to keep in mind as we go through these first 5 weapons is they could pretty much be interchangeable. So if I'm talking about one first, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the 10th ranked weapon. They're honestly so close, it's really going to come down to a matter of preference. So the first one we'll go ahead and talk about is the KN57, and my favorite class setup for this one is going to be hybrid mags, rapid fire, stock, and a suppressor. And you can kind of give or take on the suppressor. Maybe you drop it for quick draw because it was recently buffed. It's really a matter of preference. I can use the ComSec device or the stim shot for pretty much any of the weapons in this class setup, and then I can swap out dead silence for scavenger if I'm going to run crash. Gung Ho is definitely a good way to go. It is blocked in competitive for a reason. So that's just something to keep in mind. So one thing I typically like to point out is there's usually a meta in whatever Call of Duty. And what a meta is that's usually what a majority of the players are going to use. And in some Call of Duties, it's going to be SMGs, some it's going to be rifles, not really too much LMGs or snipers or shotguns or anything like that. So for whatever reason, the way Black Ops 4 is designed with the additional health, body armor, and overall map design, they've made it so rifles and tactical rifles are the most dominant weapons in the game. And in a lot of cases, even LMGs are outgunning SMGs at point blank range. And what I'm really trying to say with that is even though you might enjoy a particular weapon over another, that doesn't necessarily make that weapon better. And a personal example of that for me is the Vapor. It is my favorite weapon in the entire game. Is it the best weapon? Heck no, it's not the best weapon. But personally, it's a weapon I really enjoy using. So moving on to another weapon that's at the higher end of that tier 2 list is the Maddox RFB. And then I use the Elo sight Quick Draw 1, Quick Draw 2 with stock. And then I'm liking Gung Ho and Dexterity for this one, just to have that little bit of extra movement. And with the perks, maybe you drop Dexterity for Dead Silence and Scavenger, or whatever the case is. You have a lot of flexibility with this class setup. But overall, this is a top tier rifle that sometimes can be used as an SMG as well. And I think this one used to be a part of that tier 1 category in the earlier life cycle of the game, but as they went ahead and nerfed it a little bit, which made it a little bit harder to hit targets at a little bit longer range, which in my opinion actually raises the skill required to use the weapon. And the next weapon I'm not personally a fan of, but I know it's a pretty good weapon, and that's the SWAT RFT. And right here you can see I'm using a reflex sight, extended mags, high caliber, and then I'm also using quick draw. And then you can see I'm using Gung Ho and Dexterity, but obviously the perks really come down to preference, like I've already mentioned a couple times. And I'm not sure exactly what it is about this weapon. I know a lot of people love it. I know when the bullets register properly, I feel like it's a melt machine, but in my hand, sometimes I just do not like the funky recoil to get every once in a while. I feel like I'm on a 7 streak, I'm lasering people, then all of a sudden it gets a little bit of wonky flinch or whatever the case is. So on my favorites list, this is nowhere near the top, but I do understand that this is a very strong weapon. So the next weapon we'll go ahead and talk about is the SOG 9mm, and you can see I'm running quick draw, grip, stock, and then you can see for the perks I am running scavenger, Gung Ho, and dexterity. And the thing I really like about this weapon is it's kind of the jack of all trades, meaning it's not particularly good at one category, but it doesn't really lack in any other category either. The movement is near the top for the SMG category, the rate of fire, the range, overall movement is all pretty much near the top. It doesn't really take that top spot on any of those categories, but overall that's what makes it a good SMG. Now we're going to talk about one of the SMGs that received one of the biggest buffs in this previous 1.17 update, and that is the Daemon 3XB. This is a look at the MK2 variant. You can see I have a reflex sight, hybrid mags, rapid fire, and high caliber. I know some people will actually run high caliber too, which is perfectly fine if you don't mind dropping that reflex sight and at least one of those perks. So one of the things that I always have in my comment section anytime I talk about the Daemon is that a lot of people in the community just do not understand how rapid fire works. So with the changes they made recently with all the different buffs, it's always going to be a 2 burst or a 3 burst to kill your enemy. And in case you guys didn't know, there's a 50 millisecond delay between burst when you're firing the daemon. So by just having that rapid fire equipped, you're going to save 50 milliseconds off those 2 burst kills, 100 milliseconds off those 3 burst kills, and 150 milliseconds in case you miss a few shots here and there and it ends up taking 4 bursts to kill. So I think that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about not equipping rapid fire on the Daemon 3XB. So we've gone through all those tier 2 weapons, and I think you could really mix and match those. And as we get into this tier 1 category, I'm actually going to rank them 1 through 5. And you guys let me know what your opinions are, if you agree or disagree down in the comment section below, or if maybe you think I left a couple weapons off that you consider overpowered and will probably get a nerf down the road. The number 5 weapon on this list is actually the Switchblade SMG, and I've actually talked about this one a couple times over the past week. And if you happen to watch any of those, you know how I feel about this weapon, and overall I think it'll eventually get a nerf because I think they took the buff a little too far. And considering how greedy the game has felt in terms of microtransaction and reserves and all that stuff, I think they purposely made this weapon stronger so it'll be a little bit more desirable so that people will actually spend COD points on reserves for the people that missed out on getting those tiers, and to motivate the people that are still on Xbox trying to get the Switchblade to encourage them to actually buy those tiers. And how I think they'll actually modify this weapon and nerf it is to revert some of the changes they made and actually find a happy medium between where the previous values were on those ranges and the current values are now. And I know I'm a small content creator, so the word hasn't gotten out on the Switchblade, but once one of the bigger content creators with much larger channels than mine, whether it's Swag, K3, or Dismo, put out a video talking about how broken this weapon is, you are definitely going to see it more often in public matches. So the best class setup I found for the Switchblade is Elo Sight, Rapid Fire 1, Rapid Fire 2 with hybrid mags, and you can see the perks there. You can easily swap out the Elo in one of the perks and maybe actually run FMJ, Grip, or one of the other attachments you find useful. And that's going to go ahead and bring us to the number 4 ranked weapon on this list, and that is going to be the Swordfish. And the Swordfish is a very strong weapon. It has been strong since the game launched. They went ahead and nerfed it a little bit in the beginning, and then they went ahead and buffed it. But I think the buff was a little bit too far because I think it was already perfectly balanced before they had that most recent buff. But the class setup I would use is Reflex Sight, Quick Draw, Hybrid Mags, FMJ, and you can see the 3 different perks right there. And this pretty much makes it so the weapon is always 2 bursts to kill. If you want to go a little bit overboard and maybe equip a High Caliber or the Pentaburst, those are great options as well. So now that we're jumping into the top 3, we're going to get into the most broken guns in the entire game. If these guns were completely removed, I'd be perfectly fine with that. So the factors that make them so overpowered is that they're very easy to use. They don't have a ton of recoil. The next part of it is they do a ton of damage based off their fire rates, which all that added up together give you incredibly low times to kill, which pretty much make it so that if someone is skilled using these weapons, you pretty much have no chance unless you're using a one-shot kill weapon. So number 3 is everyone's worst enemy. Anytime I've used this in a video, even if it's with bots to show off a thermal sight or whatever the case is, people automatically dislike the video. They'll come to the comment section saying I'm trash. Even though I'm trying to show off an in-game mechanic, people literally hate this weapon, but people abuse this weapon as well. And my best class setup for this is a Reflex Sight, FMJ1, FMJ2, Quick Draw with stock, and all you need is Gung Ho. If you're going to run Crash, you're going to get your streaks really fast. You're going to be able to shoot stuff out of the sky. This thing is very powerful and broken. So the interesting thing with how to balance this weapon and how to nerf it is that you really can't adjust the range because LMGs have infinite range. So they always kill in that same number of bullets. And the problem with that is you really can't adjust that. So all you can really focus on are some of the other variables, and that's either going to be movement or recoil. So I'd recommend they either make it harder for you to move around, make you more sluggish, or make it a lot harder to manage that recoil, and I think that would balance this weapon out quite a bit. And I actually think these top 2 weapons are a little bit more interchangeable, but the Auger DMR takes this number 2 spot on my list, and that is going to be with a Reflex Sight, High Caliber 1, High Caliber 2, FMJ, and you can see the perks laid out right there. And overall, I thought this weapon was in the tier 2 category until they recently buffed it, making it so that the fire rate increased significantly, which allowed you to spam way more bullets. It was already a damage beast with High Caliber 1 and High Caliber 2, so I think the best route to go with this weapon is, especially since they can't really change much, I think all you can really do is adjust that fire rate and revert it back to what it was before, or even find a halfway point so it doesn't instantly melt you in under 200 milliseconds. And the next weapon we'll go ahead and talk about is the Rampart 17. This is the number 1 ranked weapon on my list. Like I said, it's interchangeable with that Auger DMR. I think it is completely overpowered, And a lot of people sleep on it because they feel like they're in mud because you don't have stock or whatever the case is. And I think in a lot of scenarios that might be a fair argument, but once you actually equip my best class setup for this weapon and a lot of people's best class setup for this weapon, you'll realize how broken this weapon is immediately. You're going to actually win a ton of gunfights that you feel like you have actually no business winning, and you're going to be able to dominate pretty much any lobby. So if stock is your crutch attachment, you're missing out on a very overpowered weapon, and the best class setup I use is reflex sight, high caliber 1, high caliber 2, and you can either use fast mags or grip, and I have grip with this current best class setup. So those are the top 10 best weapons in Call of Duty Black Ops 4 at the moment with their best class setups. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please remember to hit that like button. And if you made it to this point and you're not a subscriber, please remember to hit that subscribe button with notifications on. I do appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.